Moderna made a fortune during the pandemic selling vaccines to the government that were funded by your taxpayer dollars. Now, a former government worker that bought all of those vaccines has taken a brand new job. Guess where he's working? Hello there, you 6.5 million awakening wonders. Thanks for joining us on our mutual voyage to truth and freedom, where we look at the facts together and see where we've been lied to and where the flow of this centralizing, profiteering, globalist elite cadre might be leading us next. Hit the notification bell and subscribe right now. It really helps us. And let's have a look at how Moderna's vaccine project was funded, where the profits have gone. And I'm going to ask you, do you think it's right that someone that worked for the government during the pandemic is able to take a job at Moderna subsequently? And with all these news stories about vaccine side effects and vaccine injuries, let's have a look at how much money Moderna put aside to cover their liability in the event that a single person had an adverse reaction to a single vaccine. Not that I'm suggesting that happened anywhere.
Of profits does Moderna plough back into helping people who are injured by the vaccine?
Thank you. I was going to say we're aware that there is sort of a...
Once you start saying sort of a in an official inquiry, it looks like the next thing that comes is either going to be a lie or not helpful.
An indemnity for COVID-19 suppliers, but indemnities are policy matter for government to decide. I can't comment.
So Moderna doesn't put any of its profits back into helping the victims of injuries from the Moderna vaccine, is that correct?
So Moderna is a company that's focused on manufacturing vaccines.
They certainly are focused on it, but they like the funding to come from you, the public, whether it's in Australia, the United Kingdom, or the United States of America. What an incredible business model that is. You fund the research, they take the profits, people that worked for the government go and work for Moderna, and when studies reveal that the vaccine may not have been as effective as first claimed, there's no liability, even in the event that you were specifically injured by the vaccine. I wish I could have a business model like that, don't you?
The matter of indemnity for vaccine suppliers is a matter for government.
Oh, so in the event that there are vaccine injuries, you pay for that as well. Because government, as you know, don't have their own money. That's your taxpayer money. You fund the vaccine. The vaccine may not be as effective as they say it will. People that work for government go and work at Moderna. In the event that the vaccine is not effective, you're not allowed to even talk about it. No wonder you're not allowed to ask questions, because otherwise the whole racket falls apart.
So you're not prepared to underwrite the risk of your own vaccine?
This is a truly global issue. Australia, the United States of America, the UK, everywhere in the world, except for poor countries for some reason, they didn't get as many vaccines.
You're not prepared to actually put money where your mouth is when it comes to the safety of your vaccine, is that correct?
So just before you answer this question, Senator Rennick, I'll have to go to Senator Antic after this answer is given.
That's just the last question there.
Back to you.
You know you're getting close to the truth when someone interrupts the inquiry. Just before you answer that question, did you know I can fart waltzing Matilda? Doesn't sound that much like it. I've actually gone to the toilet in my trousers. Hope you've put some liability aside for that. Actually, no, we didn't. I'm not paying my own dry cleaning bills. That's taxpayer.
Just yes or no, you're not prepared to underwrite the safety of your own vaccine?
We take safety of our vaccines very seriously.
People just say stuff like that, don't they? We take it very seriously. Do you back it financially? No, not that seriously.
We have a very good pharmacovigilance process in place, in fact, a comprehensive one. However, I would only reiterate that indemnities are a matter for policymakers.
But what about a moral, social...
Yeah, I think you're going in the wrong direction when you start talking about moral, social consciences, because if you had a moral, social conscience, you perhaps wouldn't use taxpayer money to fund a vaccine, not have a fund for the liability of vaccine injuries, employ people from government that previously worked at Moderna, then go back to work at Moderna afterwards. When at the beginning of this pandemic, people saying, I've got a few questions. Is it right that we should be taking these vaccines? Is it right we should be locked in our homes? Because the past has taught me maybe not to trust big pharmaceutical companies and the government, particularly when they're working together. Guess who was called crazy? You, conspiracy theorist.
Social conscience of putting some of your profits back into helping victims of the vaccine. Zero? Is it $0?
I might just before you, again, Dr. Leong, just before you answer that, I'd appreciate
Well, it's just that she's not answering,
No,
Jay.
Don't you love Australian politics? You're like, come on, love. Plainly, you've ripped off the whole country and possibly the whole world. Look, we take safety really seriously. Look, just before you answer that, Ishnay on the vaccine's not working, nay. If I touch my glasses, it means you're about to ruin our business model. Stop talking.
I respect you asking the questions. I just want to make sure we can get to Senator Antic and keep to our timetable. But
I'll just take that as a zero. Thank you.
In the United States of America, a recent $400 million payment has been made to the NIH. Let's look at that. Is it enough money? And what's it for? And where will it end up? As Moderna racked up tens of billions of dollars in sales of its coronavirus vaccine, the company held off on paying for the rights to a chemical technique that scientists said it had borrowed from government-funded research and used in its wildly successful shot. We're just borrowing this technique. Very interesting because, of course, at that time, everything was a rush. There was an international, global emergency. But I noticed that a lot of the decisions seem to have benefited a certain strata of government, a certain strata of the corporate world. And when it comes to injuries, damages, consequences, costs, small businesses closing, suicide rates, people taking their own lives, mental health, addiction issues, it seems that there's been no contingency there. Very peculiar. But Moderna and the government have now reached an agreement. The company said on Thursday that it had made a $400 million payment for the technique that will be shared by the National Institute of Health and two American universities where the method was invented. Extraordinary. $400 million sounds like a lot of money. It is a lot of money. So imagine how much money Moderna must have made. Presumably it's a great deal because they're taking on all sorts of new staff members at the moment, some of whom, by coincidence, worked at the government when they were buying the Moderna vaccines. What a small world. What a small, corrupt world. The payment disclosed in Moderna's latest earnings report represented a small victory for the experts and activists who long argued that the company had resisted acknowledging its debt to the government and academic researchers. If pharmaceutical companies are going to make billions of dollars, which they are, it seems reasonable that the scientists who helped generate some of the initial intellectual property in the universities also share some of the gains, said Jason McClellan. Moderna is still locked in a separate high-stakes dispute with the NIH over who invented the central component of the vaccine, the genetic sequence that helps recipients produce an immune response. Like when my children argue, they have conversations like that. I was going to wear that anyway, then she wore it, and I was going to like... This is like the NIH and Moderna. This is billions of dollars. Your billions of dollars, curiously. We was going to invent that anyway. You just said it before. Do you know what's really annoying? I came up with the idea for Harry Potter, and then bloody J.K. Rowling wrote it. Give us some of that money! The NIH said its scientists, some of whom have been collaborating for years with Moderna, had helped to design that sequence. Moderna also received nearly $10 billion in taxpayer funding to develop and test the vaccine and to provide doses to the federal government. The company has sold roughly $36 billion worth of coronavirus vaccines worldwide. If indeed the taxpayer helped create that vaccine, then the taxpayer bought that vaccine, then the taxpayer pay if that vaccine goes wrong, meanwhile people question the efficacy of that vaccine, it seems that some of that $36 billion, more than 400 million, a tiny, tiny percentage of it, should find its way back to the taxpayers. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. Moderna has benefited richly from government largesse, and it does owe a public duty, but it's been very begrudging and slow in acknowledging that public duty, said Lawrence Gostin, a professor of global health law at Georgetown University. Oh, yeah, I don't know. I suppose so. I suppose you did give us that money. Okay, here's some of the profits. Mr. Gostin said the agreement announced on Thursday, which was finalised in December, was a small token in the right direction. What is this? Like Monopoly? Yes, we acknowledge that you did fund that whole vaccine and we could never have invented it without you, and that you gave us all of the money and we took all the profits. And in order to acknowledge that, here, oh God, where is it? Hold on, let me spot it. Use this microscope. There it is. Let me get some tweezers. There you go. A small token. We used these microscopes when we was coming up with the vaccine. Or when you came up with the vaccine. I can't remember anymore. It's so confusing. Chris Ridley, a Moderna spokesman, said in a statement that the company and the government have been engaged in productive discussions since 2020 regarding the licensing of certain patents related to COVID-19 vaccines. Well, I'll tell you what the rest of us have been involved in since 2020. A terrible, terrible economic disaster, a mental health crisis, and a global nightmare. They've been having productive discussions. How about some of that money back? no, I could offer you another small token. Where is that small token? He added, it was always our intention to reach an agreement, and we were pleased to have done so this past December. Oh, you lovely guys. They always intended to. We didn't intend to just make a massive profit and then give you a small token. The company has forecast COVID vaccine sales of $5 billion for 2023. A great time to be working for Moderna. That's why so many government officials that did work for the government are now working for Moderna. In fact, by a weird coincidence, Jonathan Van Tam, whose name is too much like Jean-Claude Van Damme and Jonathan Van Ness's names, he was in charge of part of the COVID response in our country, the UK, during the pandemic. Guess where he's just got a job? You're going to love this. Meanwhile, Sir Jonathan Van Tam, it's almost like the establishment are all working together to reify and make people seem real reliable and efficient and better than you, while they're 1 minute working for the government and the next minute working for Moderna, but they're better than you, remember? You don't have a Sir in front of your name. I can't afford a Sir in front of my name. Sorry, I didn't hear that. You sound like someone in need of a token. So Jonathan Van Tam, the UK's former Deputy Chief Medical Officer who became a household name during the pandemic, has become a senior medical consultant to the COVID-19 vaccine maker Moderna. That's the sort of thing you don't want happening. Imagining if at the beginning of the pandemic when people say, listen you lot, this is our World War II, why don't you all just join in? That's not patriotic. Listen, we should be shaming those people. Imagine you said then, what if high-level government officials that are involved in the recommendation of these medical solutions then take jobs? Well, that won't happen, you idiot, you conspiracy theorist. It is happening though. It is. It actually is happening. Jonathan Van Tam, whose name suggests he lives somewhere between an action star and a type of biscuit, has just been given a job at Moderna when the whole way through the pandemic, guess what he was saying? You know what the answer to this is? Moderna. Known by the initials JVT. Oh cool, he's got a nickname. That makes all the corruption just melt away. As long as we're getting shafted by people that have got cool initials, I love it. Anthony Fauci, hey, AF's on the way to F you up the BH. He was remembered by the striking metaphors he used during Downing Street briefings on the progress of the virus. Perhaps now he'll be remembered for the striking doctors and nurses who suddenly aren't as popular as they were during the pandemic. Do you remember the rainbows in the window? Do you remember the clapping for carers? It seems like with all that money being made, none of it seems to be trickling down towards doctors and nurses. That's strange, isn't it? He took up the role as part-time clinical advisor to the American biotechnology company on the 2nd of May. Van Tam, a professor who was knighted in the 2022 New Year's honours, like that is exactly how it works, isn't it? Exactly how you believe it works. Okay, Jonathan Van Tam, or JVT as we call you. Arise, Sir JVT. Well done with your fantastic work. And if this knighthood isn't enough, here's a job at Moderna. What about the rest of the country? My small businesses collapsed. Tokens, anyone? Was a member of the government's vaccine task force during the pandemic, which made decisions on supply contracts for COVID jabs and investments in manufacturing and clinical opportunities. Oh wow, so during the pandemic, it was up to him to decide who to give your money to, and then after the pandemic, he got a job at one of the companies they gave your money to. I'm gonna need a pretty big token, baby! The UK government bought tens of millions of COVID jabs from Moderna during the pandemic and struck a 10-year partnership with the US drug maker to boost research and development of mRNA vaccines in the UK, including constructing a new vaccine factory. There's a point where I would have thought the legacy media, who used to investigate stories like this, used to be proud of their investigations into financial corruption and the relationship between the state and big corporations, might have to say, oh no, that COVID thing, it was what the conspiracy theorists said it was. It was a racket. It was opportunism. To use a JVT style metaphor, we took our eye off the ball and we've been shafted right up the shitter.
Don't tear the pants out of it.
When are they going to start looking into this as ordinary standard corruption, the kind of corruption that those kind of newspapers used to investigate? Moderna's chief medical officer, Paul Burton, said Professor Van Tam's significant experience and expertise as a specialist in influenza, more like it, including its epidemiology, transmission, vaccinology, and pandemic preparedness, although many people say that one of the main problems is we prepared for an influenza pandemic rather than what this was, which was a different type of pandemic, though it was very profitable for old Van Tam. As well as a globally renowned academic and educator, will be a vital asset to Moderna as we work to improve improve population health security. Yeah, and possibly relationships with the government, and also perhaps ease the passageway between your taxpayer money and their profits, which seems to be a pretty fluid passage right now. Van Tam is prohibited from using privileged information from his time in government to further his business interests. Oh, that's good then, because we've really seen over the last few years how we can trust everybody, because it's not like everything they said at the beginning's been a total pack of absolute lies. So don't worry, because look, he's not allowed to share privileged information, so you can all go back to your cosy little beds, safe in the knowledge that there's nothing to worry about. When Van Tam left his government role, the then Health Secretary, Saeed Javid, praised him for his unique approach to explaining crucial information to the public. JVT's one-of-a-kind approach to communicating science over the past 2 years has no doubt played a vital role in protecting and reassuring the nation, making him a national treasure.